What's up and welcome back to the Kinda Funny screencast. They said it couldn't be done. They said Cad Bane will not show up. They said his hat won't be here. Oh,
they use
baby.
Anthony.
So
they didn't say,
much to
they didn't
talk
say
about.
couldn't. They said think about it. They said think about whether they should.
Here's the thing. This show, we got the cameos, man. Of course, we got Luke. We got Ahsoka. We got R2. We got all of it. There's so many cameos, anything is possible, that we might even get a cameo of Boba Fett next episode. It's crazy. I'm really, fingers crossed, he might show up.
I think the big head of the syndicate is Sice Noodles.
We kept asking if we could. We forgot to stop and ask if we should.
And we're about to
Sometimes
discuss
ILM
that.
do be like, we have computers. I wonder what we can do with them.
I am so excited to talk about this episode with you guys. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes, and I am joined by the sad boy himself, Barrett Courtney.
Oh, I'm sorry. You must have had me mistaken for someone else there, young man.
Now, I'm so sorry. I know I have not yet been introduced.
This man, of course, the one and only Anthony Carboni.
Thank you very much. Were you going for cowboy and found that you only had one piece cosplay left over?
So this is my wife's sun hat that she was, thankfully she left it behind before going home this morning because she was thinking about bringing it with her, but she let me have it for my really shitty 1 a.m. idea of dressing up as, free version of cosplay Cad Bane.
Sad Bane is what we're going to call it.
Sad Bane.
Sad Bane. There you go. And rounding out the group, of course, it is Pixel Circus's own Saige Ryan.
Y'all, I had been slowly escalating my Star Wars themed outfits throughout the course of the show so far, and I had saved this one for the finale, but we don't top this.
We just don't.
Top this. Next week doesn't matter anymore. I'm not worried about next week. This was it.
What's next week gonna do? Talk about Boba Fett?
What could it possibly do? My
Lord. Is
lord.
it just gonna tell the story of Boba Fett? I don't know.
The whole book of Boba Fett is next episode.
So much to talk about. This is the Kinda Funny screencast for each and every week. We get together to talk about the latest in movie, TV, and trailers. We have a whole bunch going on this week. Of course, we have Book of Boba Fett right now. Tomorrow, we got Peacemaker. And then Friday, we're giving you a little bit of that Jackass Forever. I love our lives. What a time to be alive. Talking about all of
I gotta jump on your Peacemaker series because I did not expect to love Peacemaker as much as I've been loving it. It surprised me.
Yeah, dude, it's an incredible show, and
So
if you guys
good.
haven't been watching it, you should definitely catch up. And a random other shout out: The After Party on Apple TV. It's from the 21 Jump Street people. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. 3 episodes out right now, and I can't believe how freaking funny it is. But that's not what we're talking about today. There's so much to talk about. You can watch the show on youtube.com/kindafunny or roosterteeth.com. You can also get it as a podcast by searching your favorite podcast service for Kinda Funny screencast, and we'll be right there for you. If you wanted to get the show ad-free and if you wanted to watch live as it's being recorded, you got to go to patreon.com/kindafunny, just like our Patreon producers, Gordon McGuire, Molecule, and @James Davis Makes have done. Today we're brought to you by DoorDash, but we'll talk about that later. We got to get right into it. I want to start with you, Saige. What'd you think of this episode?
This episode, once again, of The Mandalorian was incredible. I did enjoy that we did kind of start to meld the worlds just a little bit. It is definitely about Mando. But I will say, this episode hurt my feelings in a way that I thought we had peaked at with the bunny rabbit droid. The moment in which Grogu has to remember sad shit was honestly really mean, and I'm mad.
Yeah, that was.
I just feel like that was really messed up.
It was fucked up.
Doing the math on Grogu literally being there during Order 66, I was like, oh no. He was just a young boy of 20 when he saw that happen.
I know that we know that Luke has done a lot of messed up things, and we already understand that Luke is a very flawed man, but this might be the worst thing he's ever done.
And not the only terrible thing he does to Grogu this episode.
No!
Hey, listen, you got to look at the teacher. When you look at bonkers Dagobah Yoda, not prequels Yoda, but when you look at bonkers Dagobah Yoda, who's just hitting people on the heads with sticks and he splits his apartment with a snake and shit. He's a weird guy. And yeah, Luca's teacher is interesting to see.
Just like his
Number
father,
one,
he can't be
because
trusted with children.
Yeah, because he can't be number one because he can't be trusted with children. Number two, Because I can't believe they pulled the effect off.
Dude, I mean,
Right?
obviously, can we just talk about it? Like, it is
Let's talk about
potentially the greatest glow up of all time.
I know, dude.
Let's just get it out there. Of course, it's not perfect. Guess what? Mark Hamill is not a 20-year-old man. Like, that is impossible. This is so close to, like, wow. It's not even close. It succeeds this just fucking works. I can't believe we got a full episode with Luke fucking Skywalker, and it was just like, yeah, cool. That's a character. That's Luke.
There were maybe a couple times visually, I was never bummed. Like first season,
yeah.
Mando when he showed up in Mando, I was like, yike, keep him
rough.
at a medium wide.
And there was a reason that he's only in like a minute of that, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, they were working out. They've been working on that process forever. You think about the Tarkin and the Leia and the way they've been trying to do this with real people for years and how they've been getting better and better and better at it. It never visually took me out of it. There were some moments because, it's a blend of the way they do it. It's a blend of Mark's performance and then recordings of Mark's old voice, and they use synthesis to put them together.
Yeah, audibly.
Because Mark can't sound like that anymore.
Right.
His vocal quality has changed. You can only play his raspy Joker for so many years before it starts affecting everything.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
there were a couple times where line reads or lip sync, I was a little like, okay.
Yeah.
the line reads were the biggest snag for me as well. I think there were moments where I was just like, oh, robot Luke, okay.
Yeah, and it's a bummer because I think it really lessens the impact and the power of Luke Skywalker as a character when we are taken out of it, whether it is like, oh, his eyes looking weird or it's sounding weird and all this stuff. And I do agree that like the line reads and the way that the voices, I'm like, it's just further proof that I wish they just went with Sebastian Stan. I wish they just went with a different actor, like to just let this be a character.
He could do it.
Make him Luke.
Yeah.
He could do it and actually make Luke Skywalker have emotions in, current Star Wars stuff and not make him sound like a fucking robot.
Whatever holding cell, they keep people that are still halfway through their Marvel contracts. He's on Disney campus.
Mm-hmm.
He owes them X number of films.
I know,
Make him Luke Skywalker. But that's this is something that is part of Lucasfilm's DNA. It's part of George and it's part of ILM. It's that thing of like, we know it's not ready, but we're going to get it as close to there as possible. So you see it and you keep going with it. And that's how they build these technologies. They have to be the first to do it.
It's a good point.
When like I'm saying, like when you go back to Rogue One and you go back to, and you think about like the Tarkin stuff and you think about the Leia stuff and you think about everything they've done and the Carrie stuff in episode 9, you're like, oh, they're getting exponentially better. It's only because they keep pushing it. I will say that it helps to be acting against the most adorable puppet character in the history of ever.
Yeah.
Because, baby, I'm just looking at Grogu.
Who isn't?
Mm-hmm.
Also,
sorry, go ahead.
We're both too polite. I thought it was so interesting. I was watching that scene and I was just like, neither of those people are there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Neither of these people are real. Right? Yeah, look at these.
To an extent, like that. Like, that is the fun of Star Wars, and like this episode is so crazy to think about existing. First off, and like last episode had just the insanity of like, okay, cool, we got the Mandalorian in a N1 starfighter doing that. Like so many just things that I never thought we'd see together, and this episode is just that times 1,000. Like Luke and Ahsoka. Barrett, this feels like me and you kind of doing the handshake.
Yeah,
moment, finally.
Right? Our generations, what we love about our different, loves of Star Wars finally coming together. The fucking line where she's like, I'm a close family friend. Just tear your fucking hand into my chest and rip out my heart, Dave Filoni. What the actual fuck, dude? And then to go back to the point of like, it helps robot Luke acting against a very adorable little Yodelini, right? It does show off a little bit more when he's acting against Ahsoka, where it's like, yeah, all right, like we're gonna get through it, but it's still that scene, at least like what's written on the page and like what they're going for, of like her saying you remind me of your dad and stuff like that. Like,
dude, how does it feel for you to see the Filoni rise to power?
I mean, this is my thing, is that, like, yes, we're gonna keep talking about, like, this is a terrible Boba Fett show. Absolutely awful Boba Fett show.
Did we not say that? Terrible Boba Fett.
Yeah. Wait, it's a Boba Fett show?
But
it's crazy.
The thing is like, like, thinking about it going to bed last night, I was like, this is what they should have done from the first place. Before a fucking new trilogy, before it, like, they should have let Filoni have reign on letting him meld what he's been building for years into what people already know and love with Star Wars. The first thing we should have gotten before a new trilogy was Mando, and just, like, building out the aftermath of Episode 6, and, like, and then if you have enough building blocks, then maybe do a sequel trilogy where you have a little bit more to work with, right?
I'll tell you what, a sequel trilogy in a world where John and Dave did these shows first, I think would have looked very different, and potentially would have had, you gotta, one thing that I will say when people say this, because this is something I hear a lot, is like, why did it take so long, or why wasn't Dave just put in charge from the start, things like that. You have to remember that, like, Dave didn't direct anything live action until his episode of The Mandalorian, and Dave didn't do that. Dave only was able to do that, and I'm not saying only able to do that like he's not talented or whatever. He's one of the most talented people in the business. But it required John to come up through Marvel and come up through Disney, and for the two of them to work together to really make this happen. And so it really was an issue of timing, right? And I think, you needed Disney Plus to launch these shows, because otherwise Disney would have been making these shows for another network, and they would have been.
I understand the logistics of it. Yeah. It just kind of pains me of, like, where Star Wars is at now, and, like, how long it's taken us to get to this episode, right?
No, and I understand the dream. I understand the dream, but when people bring that up, I want to make sure that we also understand the reality of it.
100%.
So Saige and Barrett, and I want to know from y'all, the characterization of Ahsoka. I just like when you say I'm a close family friend, because we know where this is in the timeline, right? This is post Rebels. This is post everything. The fact that she's still able to separate Vader and Anakin.
And I know, and that's been something I've been waiting for as well, especially when we knew we were going to get a live action Ahsoka at some point, or there are rumors of it going into Mandalorian season 2 and all this stuff. Like, the thing I've been hoping for is, like, a conversation with the two of them kind of coming to, like, both coming to terms with, like, this person who's a big part of their lives being, like, having a very terrible side of them, a very terrible aspect of them. And so we didn't quite get it, but we still got those moments, and that was just, I didn't think it would ever be real. But the fact that we got really close to, like, them just kind of, like, talking about that is just absolutely fucking insane to me.
Yeah, that conversation was so well played. Like, Rosario Dawson is just perfection as Ahsoka Tano. Truly, like, there's not a note in the world to give to that performance for her, and it's just like, it was the earnestness in it, but also the, like, distance that she keeps as, like, a person and a character was really, really excellent. And I'm very glad that they kept it as brief as they did. As much as, like, the fan in me wants so much of them interacting. Right. And I'm like, give me a lore drop. Tell me everything.
Maybe they go on adventures.
Yes.
Maybe they go, I don't know.
Give me family emotional baggage. Drop it all. Make me cry.
Right. But it was so, like, well metered in what they gave us, and that the only conversation they really had was about Anakin. I was just like, oh, there's so few people in the galaxy that can have this conversation with you. Thank you.
And I just love that, like, they're setting it up that they gave us, like, not just a taste, like, they gave us a nice meal with this one, but then they also set it up of, like, they're gonna see each other again, we're gonna get those conversations, and, like, I just can't believe how much they're doubling down on Luke being a character. He was a lead in this episode, and they ended it on a cliffhanger that he is still very much involved in. Like, there's so many different directions they can take it, and I am so interested in a bunch of different ones. Like, I think that we're in a rare place with modern Star Wars right now that I am excited to see where they take it. And it's not, I'm hopeful they go this one direction. If they don't, I'm going to be upset. I'm more excited about where they're taking us, because I think that they're playing with their toys in a really interesting way.
Yeah. There were two things that you said, you and Barrett both brought up that I was like, nah, they can't do it. They won't do it. It's too complicated. It's too weird. It's not. One of them was heavy on the Luke. I was like,
Mhm.
there's no way they can go heavy on Luke.
No.
But they did.
Unless they catch Sebastian Stan, but yeah, they did it.
Well, I'll tell you what, as much as we're calling him Robot Luke, and that has a lot to do with the synthesis of the voice, but I do want to say that, like, I think it was Graham and Scott. I think it was probably Graham Hamilton and Scott Lang. I'll double check, but he had 2 body doubles that I saw in the credits, and I think that Graham and Scott really did a great job of Mark's mannerisms.
Oh my god,
Yes,
dude,
100%.
him running around doing the flips, doing the Dagobah Yoda backpack recreation. That whole thing, I'm like, that's Luke Skywalker.
Even
like
just
that
standing,
that's this like dweeby ass, weird ass loser kid from Tatooine.
Yeah.
But like he's also a badass. Like Luke has never looked cool doing a flip, and I love that they maintained that here. Like
I also really appreciate that.
It's just great.
Yeah, I think that's really excellent. The scene of them when he's like, let's go for a walk, and they're like force skipping around. I'm just like, oh my God, oh my boy. Like, Luke was never my guy in the original trilogy. Like, I was a Han and Leia girl, but like, God, the amount of like successful nostalgia I felt sad when they had the CGI Carrie Fisher in the way that I was supposed to. I felt shocked when they had the first CGI Luke and Mando like I was supposed to. But like, this gave me Star Wars feelings for the first time they've been able to do that with a CGI human recreation.
And Luke is my boy. So like this means so much to me, like getting this Luke back. And I know that I just sound like every freaking 30-year-old white dude in the world, but like I'm getting it. Like they're actually delivering me this thing. And fan service is it's a bad word, right? But it shouldn't be a bad word. It should start from somewhere good. And at some point, fan service, when it keeps happening, stops being fan service and just turns into storytelling. Is it good storytelling? That's a different question. But I think that with what Filoni's doing here is clearly there's the 3 eras, right? And take it or leave it, everyone has their opinions on what the quality of each era is. He's doing the best he can to just make it all work together. And I love that we're in this point right now that this post-Jedi world, before the sequels, he now needs to do exactly what he did for the prequels of make those pieces of shit make sense as much as possible, and it enhances them. We're clearly seeing him do that for the sequels here. We're seeing Luke start to turn into the Luke that we see in the sequels, and that's going to be a really, really sad downfall, but I'm here for it, and I trust that they're going to like make more sense to me, and the amount that they're showing him with this green lightsaber makes me so fucking happy.
I had a thought last night because I was thinking about it of like, take what you will of the quality of any of the eras, right?
I love all of them.
And I think there's such an interesting opportunity, especially with them doubling down on Luke, where it's like, I don't know if it'll hit for everybody, but there is a possibility where they could tell a story with Luke in this Filoni era verse post original trilogy that sells people more on his characterization in the sequel trilogy, which I find very fascinating. And like, again, maybe they do it, maybe they don't. Maybe it works for a lot of people, maybe it doesn't. But I still think that's like a really fascinating, just like possibility now that they're going all in.
I do agree that like there is to me as a Star Wars fan, the gap between those is very easily like explained for how Luke became who he became. It's a lineage thing, it's a bloodline thing, it's the just dark pull of the Force. Totally, I'm very able to justify that in my head. A lot of people don't want to and choose not to for how he got there and don't like it. And that's okay. That's completely valid. I'm more interested in if we're going to continue telling Skywalker story, which we kind of all thought that we were done with. If we're going to continue that, I would be more interested in hearing it from the way it impacted people around him than more CGI Luke stories. Yeah. There is going to be a point, right? Yeah.
Which is what Clone Wars, and I do love this because I, like you, Saige, TLJ Luke makes perfect sense to me.
Same.
You were the special golden boy, and then not everything got fixed by being the special golden boy, and you get older and you get disillusioned, and
also there's like post-traumatic stress disorder at play of like having been to war and being afraid that you are going to be at the foot of the next literal thing that happens that's just like your father.
It's the story of the old samurai, right? Like these are samurai movies, they're cowboy movies and they're samurai movies, and so to me TLJ Luke makes a lot of sense. But there was a moment that was really set up in this one that I think is very interesting. There were a couple moments. Number one, is where Luke looks at Ahsoka and goes, "What do I do with him? I'm the Jedi. I'm the second coming. I'm little baby space Jesus. But I don't know how to be little baby space Jesus because I had to kill my dad. He could have taught me.
Yeah.
Yoda had to die. Obi-Wan had to die. I learned about 3 weeks worth of shit. I did my best and I'm very powerful, but how do I teach this kid who's maybe even more powerful than me?
And who I'm talking to technically aren't even a Jedi anymore, like where you stand. So
he's like, I don't know what to do with this. And then the second one is when he offers the choice to Grogu, you can see in his face, oh Jesus, what do I do if he picks the armor?
Yeah.
So this is really interesting.
School.
And I want to talk about all this, but before we do, let me tell you a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. If you've been listening to any kind of funny podcast, you know that we absolutely love using DoorDash. It's so great. It's so simple to just be able to order whatever food we want and then have it delivered right to our house. Along with the restaurants you love, you can now get groceries and other essential items delivered with DoorDash. You can get some drinks, snacks, and other household items in under an hour. With over 300,000 partners, you can support your neighborhood go-tos. We're always talking about Volcano Curry in San Francisco, of course. Ordering is easy, and your items will be left outside your door when you choose contactless delivery drop-off, whether it is the local favorites or the nationwide chains like things like Popeyes, Cheesecake Factory, all of that. For a limited time, y'all can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on your first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter code KindaFunny. That's 25% off up to a $10 value and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code KindaFunny. Don't forget, that's code KindaFunny for 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Subject to change, terms apply. So I'm so interested in everything you're just saying here. And like talking about the Last Jedi Luke, I'm totally down with Last Jedi Luke. I always just wanted more of what we're getting now here of like seeing how he turned into that. So like I'm so happy with the characterization of Luke so far from what we got of Mando season 2 and now going in here. But I'm really interested in this Luke Skywalker, this couple years post Jedi. So he has toppled the Empire. This isn't a week after that though. This is what, 2 years, right?
5 years.
What was it? 5 years.
9 ABY? Or
Yeah,
is this,
so-
no, is this 4 ABY?
it's 5 years after Jedi was when Mando season 1 started. So it's rough.
And then Jedi was 2 years after New Hope, right?
Yeah.
So 5 years after
If
that.
you're 9 ABY. That makes sense.
It is. Yeah, I was right.
Yeah.
9 ABY.
So,
Go
some
on.
time has passed here. So Luke's clearly been doing something because Luke's talking like a prequel Jedi. All this attachment and all this stuff. He never was taught that by Yoda. He was never taught that by Obi-Wan in the original trilogy. Like that is a new thing for us of getting Luke Skywalker kind of with the teachings and understandings of the prequel type Jedi stuff. And I'm really interested because I feel like that goes directly against original trilogy Luke and him kind of rejecting the Jedi ways and like him trying to save his dad, right? Like everything we see at the end of Jedi, I think is Luke kind of creating a new type of Jedi. So I'm interested in, is this a double test for Yoda? Making him choose, does he actually want him to choose the defense? Choose the thing that is not the flashy weapon, right? And that is the new Jedi way. Maybe I'm just being crazy and wanting this to be what I want it to be, but like I think that is way more interesting than him just going back to what I always thought was really lame of you need to not have attachments. It's like, hey, well, what about this attachment, this attachment, this attachment, this attachment? Oh, those don't count.
And what about the time you had attachments and you left your Jedi training to go? And but I really like that. I really like that that kind of conflict and how he's redoing it to someone else, but giving them the choice where like Luke kind of like just kind of gave, like, at least in the eyes of Yoda at the time, like he just kind of just like left and gave up. It's not like Yoda gave him the choice of like, oh, well, you could stay here and become a Jedi, or you can do this and, have your worldly attachments, but give up on Jedi training and stuff. I think that's a really interesting just like turn for him to be the teacher and to give that choice. And I'm excited to see what we get out of that, not just for Grogu, but for Luke as well.
Luke, I want to bring up real quick.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick is I really like how one of my favorite things about the Mandoverse so far is the theme music. Obviously, that was incredible. And when it comes back, they do such a good job of having the old school classic John Williams cues like Yoda's theme and all that stuff in this and the Force theme and all that. But I love that they've kind of created a new theme for Luke where he has the theme that played when he came in the season 2 finale plays throughout this episode, and it's very dark and foreboding. Like I didn't expect them. It worked for that scene because it's supposed to like be this rise of like, who is this? Oh my God, is it him? Oh my God, it's him. This is insane. But now it kind of has a different meaning to it, where it's like you can see how conflicted he is, and I like that there is this almost dark side sound to the theme itself in his confliction when he's like talking to Ahsoka, like, what do I do with him? And even when he's like at the top of the trees with Grogu, like I love that Luke is still learning. And I love that, like, I feel like we are going to get way more of him than I expected. Go for it, Carboni.
So this is where I push my glasses up. So in a lot of the connective tissue, the expanded, like basically the new canon, whatever you want to call it, a lot of Luke stuff has happened, whether it's in the Marvel comics, whether it's in the novels, even in Battlefront, we saw a lot of Luke. And Luke has been on a journey to find out what Jedi mean. That's one of the things he's been doing since the fall of the empires. He's been searching for these things. He knows he's part of a tradition. He wants to know how to continue that tradition. So seeing him sort of talk about these attachments and things like that, I think number one, it's a little out of character for like you're saying, original trilogy Luke. It wasn't out of character for his training. Like Barrett said, Yoda tried to tell him, he's like, dude, if you go to your friends now, this is the problem with friends. You see what I'm saying? If you go to your friends now, you won't be able to help them. If you stay with me, and Din had to see that same thing and had to be told that by Ahsoka. So we're seeing this sort of proto Jedi Luke. This is a guy who's figuring out how to be a Jedi. He wants to teach the Jedi ways. This is the beginning, and that's why that dark music is so good. Even though we see all these good spider bots building this temple that we know is not going to go well.
Yep.
This is something that is doomed to fail.
Yeah.
And here he is repeating a lot of the mistakes that the other Jedi made because the Jedi are gone and he's learning from their texts. And he's not the guy who throws the lightsaber yet. He's not the guy who burns the temple yet. He's not the guy who goes, these books suck and they took me down the wrong path.
Yeah.
He still believes he's rebuilding something noble at this point. And we know that he's not.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the direction they take it, though, because I still think, like, even I played Battlefront, I've read a lot of the Luke-centered comics and stuff, and I still think they have the potential for him to try to make a Jedi Academy that's a different style of Jedi. And
for sure.
I think ending this episode on the cliffhanger the way they did is gonna go. Like, there's a bunch of ways it could go, but the lamest answer is he ends up joining the fight next episode in his little Mandalorian armor, and I hope that that's not the case.
They set up him, now he's able to do mad hops, Tim, They
so
set it
what
up.
do you think he's going to choose? I love
little
his little
jumpies.
Hops. His little hops were so good.
Adorable.
Everything is so good.
So look, like, following this show with how Book of Boba Fett has been going, which is unmitigated disaster in terms of pacing and in terms of being a Boba Fett show, but in terms of just being, it's a Mandoverse show, if you don't care about what the title is, if it's just weekly Star Wars, like, which is kind of how they've been treating it, it's just Filoniverse and all this shit. I honestly, and I know this is going to sound crazy to fucking say, I would not be surprised if in the same way that season 2 of Mando ended and we got the Book of Boba Fett tease at the end, if we get the war, we get whatever they do with the Boba Fett situation, maybe Grogu does go with him and Grogu isn't his first student and that at the academy. Guess who would be the first student? Ben Solo. And guess who's going to bring Ben Solo? Han Solo.
And from what we've seen
in a stinger, and this show just keeps throwing everybody. You want Cad Bane, you get Cad Bane. And like, I think that there's still potential for the Kira Han Solo connection. And I know that this episode going too
talk
far.
about Cad Bane.
We haven't talked about Cad
We
Bane
haven't
yet,
talked
but I
about
do
Timothy
think
Oliphant, man.
Yeah. But I'm with you, Tim. I think that Ben Solo is the first actual student at the academy.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that he was so inexperienced in running that and teaching these people means that this does not go on much longer. That's my headcanon for it, is that he didn't get all of the experience of raising a Jedi before that generation of them, or maybe he'd have been a little better at it.
Yeah.
So we know, because of the rise of Kylo Ren comics, if they're following the comic book canon, which they are, sort of.
But I mean, I remember a comic book canon of Yoda's lightsaber not being with
so
Luke.
there are a couple things with Yoda's lightsaber. You want to get into it, we can get into it. But The Rise of Kylo Ren does say that Ben Solo is the first student of the temple.
Okay.
So whatever that means, that doesn't mean Grogu can't be hanging out. The temple isn't built yet. You know what I mean? Like, there's no real class yet.
That's actually true. That could still be absolutely justifiable, I think. In that the academy didn't exist. It was just someone he trained, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So who knows? And then the lightsaber, I believe that he has is the second one that he builds for himself on Dagobah, which is not in the films, but it's in other shit.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, because that other one he lost that one. Like Dooku fooled him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to talk about Cad Bane. Let's get into Cad Bane.
Cad Bane, I mean, first off, awesome he's here, and we're going to see him and Boba. But the one line that I want to talk about is the Syndicate. Like, he talks about the Syndicate, and the Syndicate was a capital S. So it's like they're treating these groups of crime people as like not just the Pikes. It's like the Syndicate is a thing.
There's something larger going on.
I believe in the Kira theory.
Yeah. I believe in the Kira theory. Before we even like dive deep into that, I just love the thread and the slight tease to this kind of end scene before we go back to Grogu, right? At the very beginning, right, we see Timothy Oliphant going up against talking to these Pikes. He's like, "Get out of here! You ain't a part of these parts, you know." And you know him killing all of them, kicking over the spice, and it was like, oh shit, like that's cool. And then like we immediately get lost into like all the stuff that Mando's doing, go through all the Luke stuff, the Grogu stuff, and then you kind of just forget about it. And then you know Mando finally goes back to Tatooine. We see Boba Fett for like 2 seconds, and we're like, we're gonna. Oh hey, I forgot that this is your show. You know, Black Chrysanthemum's there, the mods are there. It's a cool, like, it's cool to see like the team together, even if it is very, very quick. And Mando's like, all right, well, we need foot soldiers. Maybe I can do something about that. And so when he goes to the town, I was like, oh shit, right? We saw Timothy Oliphant at the beginning of this episode. Like, of course he would go to someone local he knows and trusts. And so I thought that was a really cool kind of setup where they give you they plant a seed. Then they make you forget about it, and they're like, all right, now he's back.
But at the same time, like, when we talk about pacing, we're talking about the building up of this syndicate and the building up of the Pikes as the bad guys, and they front-loaded that a little bit with the Tusken stuff. But how nice would it have been to have to go to Freetown, to go to Mos Pelego, have this thing where we see that the Pikes are spreading out across Tatooine, have that little scene maybe in like episode 3 or 4, and then don't go back to that for a couple episodes. I really feel like they're getting into the habit of loading up the moments of guest reveals and spectacle rather than pacing out the story in a way like the Sinister Syndicate, really the idea is only coalescing in my head over the end of last episode and the beginning of this one. You know what I mean? It's still nebulous in my mind. Like it's getting there, but there is no Empire looming.
Yeah.
There is no First Order looming. I can't point to Kylo Ren. I can't point to Vader.
It's still just such like a cloudy spectacle of like whatever the fuck they're going up against. And I think the only way they can try to salvage it's too late to salvage for this show, Book of Boba Fett, season 1, whatever we're calling it, right? It's too late to salvage it for that, but I think a way they could salvage it for the future, and you know, it's not like they're making these weekly, right? Like this has been their plan for a while, right? And so I could see the possibility they have their fight with the Pikes this next episode. Maybe, most likely, it's not a really satisfying like, oh, they're going up against these, these fishmen. But I could see that event of taking out the Pikes leading to a reveal scene of someone like being that fight being lost, being reported to the head of the syndicate, and that being revealed of like, oh, this is who they're facing up against. again, way too late. Not great for this story being told right here in these 7 episodes, but in the larger scheme of things of like what they might be building up to, still could be cool. But yeah, that is definitely where I was like, man, we're in one more episode, and besides one person, I don't give a fuck about who they're about to fight in this last episode.
Now, what this left for me was we've been talking about like, well, it must be the last episode. That's the war with the Pikes, or now the larger syndicate. But it led me to believe that there's no freaking way. There's no way. There's one more episode. It's not happening. We're not doing a full like start to finish war. So is this setting up the larger threat of the Mandalorian season as opposed to a threat that is going to be buttoned by this season?
Absolutely. I think that's the case. I mean, I do think that they have gathered and focused enough, which is hilarious to say because it was literally 30 seconds in this episode of Boba Fett. But like seeing the mods, again, love that they call them the mods. But seeing like the group that they've kind of like got together, it's not just a couple dudes now. Like there is a lot of factions like working together, like Chrysanthemum and all of them that like, and we have Mando there as well, and the Jabba Palace guards, all that stuff. Like there's enough people that they have to have something to do next episode, or else it's really going to be all for naught, and the show is going to be like a disaster. So they're going to go up against something. There is going to be a battle next week. Will it be a war?
I don't think it's a full-out war against the Syndicate. I do think they take care of Boba's territory this last episode. And that's all I've been expecting, is that all he cares about is his territory, this one thing that seems so big and important to him, that is one tiny aspect to a more looming threat that we will get over the course of, Mandoverse lore over the next few years. And so, I definitely see that, where they're gonna fight some fish people. Yeah, we're gonna fight Cad Bane next week, and then Bing Bang Boom. Maybe
we're gonna fight Cad Bane next week. We're gonna fight
Cad Bane.
Cad Bane.
We got very close up on Cad Bane's face a lot. How did everybody feel about that? Because like this live action Cad Bane,
I feel like he had the teeth that we wanted the Pikes to have. That's number one. I felt number two. I was so happy to hear Corey's voice.
Yes.
He will forever be Cad Bane. I'm so glad Corey didn't have to get into any makeup, but
it took me a second to be convinced that it was him, because it wasn't until like his last
the hat
line.
wasn't gigantic.
Yeah, it wasn't.
That's the thing, is it was serving like really toned down Pharrell.
Yeah, and well, no, not visually. It was the voice. It was. I'm not talking about Cad Bane. The second he was there walking, like even from the distance, I knew. I was like, that's my fucking boy.
That's our boy.
I was not convinced that it was the original voice actor until the very last line, where you kind of hear it a little more. Felt like it was a little toned down in this scene compared to like his animated performances. But
his animated one has a bit of like Pennsylvania Dutch in it that I always think is really funny. Like it's a little Amish Mennonite and sometimes.
And I think it was a little lost in the scene, but then you hear it at like the very end. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the
yeah. I think they were like, reel it up, buddy.
Guys, his little lips made me uncomfortable.
Yeah. So you're asking, like, how do we feel about live action Cad Bane? Like, should I have been careful for what I wished for kind of situation? And for me, it's one of those things, we talked about it with the Pikes, right? It's always going to be jarring for characters who were designed for originally an animated show, especially a very specific style of animated show, to be translated into live action. I don't think he looks as pathetic as the Pikes, but there was a little bit of like pause where, but I also have to remind myself of like, he is in the Clone Wars, and the Clone Wars are all about, very sharp edges, like very stylized cartoon animated style. And so to bring him into live action, I was like, you know what? I'm fine with this. His teeth are definitely, like, he definitely had some buck teeth moments when he was trying to put, close his mouth sometimes. But I do, like, looking at this, just looking at the still image, it doesn't upset me. He looks a little.
I really liked it.
He looks a little lighter blue than I wanted him to look, but we also haven't seen him, I think, canon in a visual medium in 20 years. So it's like, the boy's aged a little bit.
I really liked it. I actually thought that the character makeup was really, really fantastic. I thought that like the whole like the way that they contoured to achieve that face shape on a human skull, as someone who's like a little bit of a special effects makeup nerd, I think that the way that they used the blue with those black, the way it comes in to like
the way that they utilize
reshape
his like kind
face.
of the way they utilize his kind of like face.
I thought this was really freaking cool. His little lippies did make me uncomfortable. They were just like a little small and crusty and doing some weird stuff throughout
They're
it.
supposed to. I think
They're
they're supposed to.
right?
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to want to smooch Cad Bane.
I do
I get
though.
that.
Well,
So
I mean, the teeth. I'm back interested. Okay, but the lips, I'm not.
I mean, I thought that you remember my main argument was like, please don't do it. It's going to look silly. I thought it looked great. You think about the Duros, like, Cad Bane is the first like foreground Duros like we've seen, but then you think about the Duros like because they were in the background of the cantina and they were like stationary rubber masks. They were mid-ground characters. They were never meant to move.
Right.
So the evolution of this kind of character is really, really good.
I knew you weren't convinced, Carboni. I knew you weren't convinced because you're like his hat is so fucking big. And I will say he doesn't always have the same hat because I do think this hat here.
That's more like the one he's wearing.
Yeah, and I think this is the one that we see him wear in Bad Batch. If I'm
this is Bad Batch.
Yeah, and so I think his really big one he loses eventually, and he gets a new one at some point in Clone Wars. I forget when that happens, but yeah.
Here's a fun fact: there was a Cad Bane costume that was made for events around Clone Wars. And when we sent Max Scoville to the warehouse to open up all the stuff that we did, like it's uncatalogued stuff, he found one of the Cad Bane hats. And he said it was so heavy. He said it was like 20 pounds to wear a Cad Bane hat. And he said the moment he put it on...
Look at how big this original hat is. Look at how big that is.
Incredible.
He said he could feel his vertebrae. And Max Scoville's a big guy. He's like 6'4". He's a tall boy. But they also got rid of like... They toned down like his weird long cartoon duster and all that stuff. Like they really made him fit into the world. I hope this is not how the Marshal goes out because I love Cobb Vanth.
I think they're both dead. I'm gonna be.
I think they're dead.
No. Medics came to help him.
I mean, there's a lot of like
they wouldn't show medics come to help him if he was dead.
Because I thought those were just town folks who were just like worried about him.
They did say like get a doctor, and then someone was like get a med kit.
Yeah, bring a stim.
I think they're calling that out, like showing the other guy get fucking blasted to hell, and then
that dude
only
is dead.
in the shoulder. Yeah, I think that they're trying to tell us he's still alive, and I hope so because I'm with you, Carboni. I really like him. Timothy Oliphant looks dope as hell, and I just love his costuming.
Star Wars really well, which is like not something that if you had told me beforehand, like before his surprise appearance in episode 1 season 2 of Mando, I would have been like, well, that's kind of weird. Isn't that going to be distracting? It's like casting Game of Thrones guy as the hammer maker in Infinity War. Like it's kind of distracting because he's such a like. I don't think of him as something in that universe. Where it's
unlike all the other unknown Marvel actors.
Yeah, exactly.
Just small people getting their start.
But there's something to talk about when it's such a random role and you have such a big like actor that you wouldn't expect. Like it gets distracting to a point, and I would have assumed that before Oliphant came in that would have been the same for him. But he fits into the universe so well, and he is one of the characters where like he's a really great backwater planet Filoni character, and Filoni utilizes those characters so well, where they, the Jedi come out in the Clone Wars to help this one planet one time, and you fall in love with some of the townsfolk, and then they leave, and you're like, oh, cool, that was a cute episode, and then they come back like 3 seasons later, and you're like, oh my god, like, what have they been up to? And he is one of those, like, I feel like he's one of the first and few live-action Mandoverse characters that they can do that with, and so, yeah, if he is dead, I'm bummed out because I think he's great, and I would love to see him kind of just randomly help out every once in a while.
He's a good character to come back. I want to shout out first of all Chuck Wendig, my buddy Chuck Wendig, who created Cobb Vanth for the Aftermath novel, and a lot of this stuff, like this was stuff that was created in the Aftermath trilogy, which was road to the sequels, right? You remember they had the Journey to Force Awakens,
right?
And man, they kept all of the stuff that Chuck created, like Mos Pelego and becoming Freetown, and like the way all that happens, even him having the armor. When they showed the guy in Boba Fett's armor, I texted Chuck. I was like, "Is that Cobb Vanth?
They're fucking doing it, yeah.
Is that Cobb Vanth?" So this whole story, and just bringing Timothy Olyphant, like his attitude in this episode just solidifies the character so much more. The whole thing where like, yeah, I'm a nice guy and I want to help people, but the thing where like he sits down with Din at the table and he's like, now you and I are square. You took the armor and you stopped the thing, so you can't come here and ask me for stuff. You're not allowed.
And I love that. I love that Din like kind of return when he's like, it's hard to ask for a favor. You know, like I loved that kind of, you know, mutual respect, the respect he has for that character, you know.
And Din's growth as a person.
Character growth, exactly.
Yeah.
It was the character growth when he was like, this is hard and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I was just like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I was raised to show nobody anything about me. And I'm telling you that I think of you as a friend.
Yeah.
I mean, him and Mando together, I think is just great and makes him even better. Like the Marshal has been one of my favorite of the newer characters. I just love his swagger. I love how even take the Boba Fett armor off of him, he still looks cool. I love his haircut. He has its hair goals. I hope that when I get older, that's how my hair looks. And I hope it doesn't look like Robert Patrick's in Peacemaker. And I think it's going to look like that. But I am
just so... Robert Patrick's hair always looks like that, Tim?
That is absolutely a win.
Do you think when Robert Patrick wakes up in the morning, he looks like the dad from Peacemaker?
Well, I'm just saying that when I'm older, I'm still going to style my hair that way. And I hope I don't look like that. I hope I look like Timothy Olyphant in this, because he looks so badass. And I love that he doesn't just look badass. He is badass, and he talks badass, and he's badass with other badasses. And seeing Mando and him talk, it just reminds me of how Boba Fett is not what I expected him to be, not what I wanted him to be. And it's just like, what did they do with all of this? Especially, it's like such insult to injury with the Book of Boba Fett.
So you remember
featuring Boba Fett, but featuring two better Boba Fetts.
My favorite line that the Marshal has, and he does it like 3 times in the hand. He's like, "You want to think about it?" Like that's all he says.
Yeah,
you want to think about it, and that's it. That's it.
Like
it's
the
so
way,
cool.
Like y'all are talking about, like kind of like the samurai and like Western tropes of like this scene was like
they hit the Western trope hard.
Western star in space trope, and it's so fucking cool. And like, and this is something I'm fascinated about because listening to like a couple other people like kind of talk about maybe watching Boba Fett and stuff like that. Like, is it worth it? And you know, like for us who are like major Star Wars dorks, like it finally paid off with like these last 2 episodes of like the setup of like where they're going and stuff like that. But I'm left to wonder, and this is something that we've kind of talked about before, of like people who were just like, yeah, Mandalorian was pretty cool, and you know, I've watched the movies. I'll check out this Boba Fett show, and you know, maybe I'll learn more about the Boba Fett.
No, you've learned more about Cobb Vanth in this series than you have about Boba Fett.
And I texted my sister. I was like, "Hey, are you watching Boba?" Because you know, my sister doesn't like Star Wars, likes Grogu. She's a Grogu fan.
Yeah.
I was like, "Are you watching Boba Fett?" She's like, "Oh, should I?" I was like, you can start from this episode.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Yeah.
Dip in.
But even with like the leaving aside like the Grogu stuff and stuff like that, because that's stuff that's been set up in Mandalorian, in the Mandoverse. Like I am left wondering of like the Cad Bane reveal, the, you know, still building up to this syndicate and stuff like that. Like, does that do anything for newcomers? Does it even pique their interest? Like people who have no idea of like who...
Cool Blue Cowboy piques interest. Like I went and I checked. I was like, I looked up Blue Cowboy this morning. I was like, Blue Cowboy
trends through the roof.
And I was looking at it, and there were so many articles. Who is the Blue Cowboy? What is the Blue Cowboy about? Like all this stuff. He's a visually cool character. And
look at that! Look at that shot right there! Like,
damn, that's good.
But show me one where he shows his little mouth.
Yeah, show me his
I can try to enhance.
I did in fact drop a link in the general. I mean, if you wanted,
if you want to look at his teeth,
there is a link in the general chat. And
okay, hold on.
If you wanted that, I don't know. I left it there a little bit ago. I also before we, it's a little. Because he was getting so angry and he was giving a little, and his mouth kept moving and like scrunching up all weird.
Jennifer Beal, guys.
Oh,
That's the thing is I want to talk
forgot
about
about that
Garza Fwip
fucking
before we
scene.
sign. Yeah, before we sign off, we gotta talk about Garza Fwip. Is Garza fucking Fwip dead?
Yes.
I hope not.
He has to be.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Garza
all-
Fwip
I
is
think she is.
dead.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
no way she got out of that.
Everybody in there
upsetting.
died, and that was such a like. I loved that scene, and I know, and the thing that like I left this episode with, outside of all the other cool shit, was like, man, like they've really kind of, I feel like, missed the mark on building up this Boba Fett story. And this moment is so fucking good, and we should have had more moments like that to build up the lengths of like where the Pikes are willing to go, where their bosses, the entire syndicate is willing to go. Where like we've had this established thing where we're theorizing who this character, like, is she gonna be like more important? Is she like, you know, like secretly like has a hand in all of this? Like what's going on with her? And for them to just fucking murk them was just like a holy shit.
Yeah.
Kind of like our thoughts on the story turned upside down. These are the bad guys, and I wish we got more moments like that before this one. You know,
I think that everything that they've set up about Boba Fett in this series, and like this is not me being dramatic, I think all of it could have been an episode of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
I think that
One
all
episode.
of Boba Fett's story could have been one. And also, like, if I was watching a season of Mando, for instance, and they gave an episode to Boba Fett, I wouldn't be like, whoa, this isn't The Mandalorian. I would be like, oh, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Here's my
Because he didn't
pitch.
have a show.
Here's my pitch for you. Instead of calling it Book of Boba Fett. I mean, look, they called it the Book of Boba Fett because Boba Fett is in it. He's hugely popular character.
He's a way to sell the show without spoiling the other ways to sell the show.
Right. But listen, they created the title A Star Wars Story.
Mm-hmm.
They created that for the films.
Yep.
What if we just got in between seasons of The Mandalorian or Ahsoka or things that follow a character that we know? What if we got these 6-episode things that they called Star Wars stories? Right?
That.
And it just follows characters we know and it builds these things out. I would love that. And then, I mean, it's essentially what we have with this, but you don't get like a really talky Boba Fett who's like just hanging, you know?
Yeah.
Like you don't need to do that to Boba Fett to have an interesting Star Wars series.
I agree.
Yeah. So many directions to go. One last thing I want to bring up is just in crazy theories and shit. The choice that Luke gives Grogu is interesting in so many ways of like, wow,
The
what are they
Kingdom
doing
Hearts
with
choice?
this? Exactly. But they're clearly like, they're going to have to answer that choice. And there's not many ways it could go. He either does this or he does this. But I do think that it kind of does flow out from that of like each choice he makes could then turn into a bunch of different decisions. But I am just going to say they're building up that the Mandalorian sees Grogu as a Mandalorian. And if he doesn't take Yoda's lightsaber, there is another saber out there that he can take. And it's the dark saber. And I'm just going to say it. It feels like they're going to build this up that Baby Yoda
Grogu
gets the
leads
dark
the
saber.
Mandalorian.
It feels like the storytelling the show's building.
Yes, the claim to Mandalore.
I will say with like my continued want and predictions of Cad Bane, I feel like I think I did predict like the Luke showing up because there were like questions of like who was going to show up at the end of Mando season 2, and I was pretty confident it was Luke.
You did say Luke. You did.
And so with like I feel like just Filoni and I are just like in the same wavelength, brain kind of like parallels, right? And I need to predict this. I need to predict this here. I already tweeted it out, and I know it might not be the person who was cast for the Ahsoka show, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but I'm calling it right now, especially, and I want to bring it up because Ahsoka was shown in this episode, is that in the Ahsoka show, we're getting the fourth sister. And the fourth sister is going to be revealed to be Barriss. And that's all I'm fucking saying. And I'm predicting that now, and it's going to happen.
I think
Knowing Filoni was going to kill off Barriss originally at the end of that arc in Clone Wars, and then was like, I have an idea for her.
Hey, can I tell you what, Barrett? I've been naysaying your theories so far, mostly based on aesthetic choices. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you this: story-wise, I think you're on the money.
Yeah.
I think you're on the money. I think Barriss Offee's coming back in a big, big way.
I agree.
Do you know who I think? Do you know who I think they will maybe show first, we know who is playing Sabine Wren.
That's true.
We might see Sabine first, especially because of the Mando connection.
Right.
I mean, I've been wanting. We were so
we
close
might
to
see
a
Sabine first.
We were about to get like a
Didn't go down for
Sabine direct call out. What was it, last episode? Like, I need her.
Also, but can I ask you something? Can I ask you guys something?
Ask me.
How would a Grogu carry that dark saber? He's so small.
It's so. If you want to talk about weird aesthetic choices,
Any saber.
Well, he's got a little one.
I'm telling you, he's gonna
A
do
little
it.
happy one.
Use the Force. Some Final Fantasy shit. The saber's just around him, fucking things up.
That's great.
They're selling
think that's
out with
awesome.
Grogu, dude. I'm telling you, they're going all in. This episode like really convinced me that they're going off the deep end, and the future of Star Wars is Grogu and Ahsoka, and Filoni has taken over. It's his world now. We're all just living in it.
My turn for a question like that. Was anyone else surprised it was chainmail?
Well, we talked.
Tiny
Carboni brought it up
chainmail?
last week.
Yeah.
Tiny little chainmail.
I saw the little links and I was like, chainmail. And I was half joking, but I was like, half like, no, that's chainmail. And I guess it's because he's so little a guy.
Yeah.
I guess.
And he's still growing.
And if he chose the lightsaber, here's what would be the biggest crime. We'd never get to see the little guy in chainmail.
Yeah, but then we're gonna lose his little like fluffy neck cloak thing that I love so much.
Yeah, or over
right.
it.
Yeah. I love this so
I
much.
just want to see the little guy in chainmail.
That's all I want, and we're gonna see it hopefully the coming. Well, not coming weeks. Next week we have one more week, and we'll see what happes because literally anything can happen. This show doesn't give a fuck.
You get everything you know.
McGregor can come out. He's just like, hey, I'm Obi-Wan. What's up, motherfuckers? But anyways, we'll see what happens. I love you all. Till next time. Goodbye.